there's a distinction that I want to make that I think is very important. There is regular people, and there are media and political elites.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And so, like, if somebody says, like, I recently criticized Kyle Kulinski because he went on Project Liberal stream.
Yeah, seriously, what the fuck, man?
I stopped following Kyle as soon as he shilled for Joe back in whenever that was.
Well, but let me. I'm not somebody who's saying I'm going to abandon Kyle, but what I will say is this, which is, why did I criticize it? Is it because I don't think we should try to persuade liberals? Well, it depends what you mean by liberal, right? If you mean the wine mom who votes for Democrats and cares about her community and, you know, is organizing for the PTA and is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, absolutely we should be trying to persuade that person. 100,000%. I love that woman, right? That woman is a good-hearted, civically minded person. Yeah, she's a Democrat. She's been misled. Maybe she watches too much MSNBC, whatever the fuck. That woman, absolutely. A 20-year-old neoliberal ideologue who is trying to create a think tank to get money from billionaires so that they can crush left-wing populism, which is what Project Liberal is, right? It's an anti-left-wing ideological project, which is targeting Bernie Sanders and AOC or the Squad or anybody to their left, and they're trying to discredit us, and they're trying to, it's basically just this generation's version of the New Democrats or the Blue Dogs or whatever. You're a fucking idiot. That person is not gettable. They're an ideological elite. They are enemies of us. If you give them any kind of credibility, if you try to build, what are you building bridges with? You're building bridges with air. They don't have anything. They are just trying to obfuscate the situation. It's not, and they call themselves liberal because they're explicitly rejecting people like Bernie Sanders. They're explicitly rejecting us.
Jen gave me shit because, and listen, I'm not proud of this dude. We've had some people on the podcast that probably should never have had on, but I actually had to.
Oh, I know who you're going to mention, and I never would have invited her on.
So I had the dollar store knockoff Melissa McCarthy on our show, Rachel Bittkoffer, and she ended up being she ended up being as bad as you would have imagined. And I think that was like that one experience where you walk away just thinking, yeah, there's no point. Don't bother.
The thing about somebody like Rachel is she's another. There's people that use the left to grift. Okay, and this is just
do tell.
This is just the reality, which is, you know, if you want to get into, I want to explain some of these social dynamics to those of us that are a little bit more neurodivergent, like myself. Basically, to get into the elite Democratic Party, there's a couple different ways, right? The first is you come from money. You go as a legacy student to Ivy League schools. You get an internship as a communications intern in DC.
Mike, you're not talking about anybody in particular that you may have or may not have worked with in the recent.
Honestly don't even know if I am. This is an archetypical person. You know, like there's a lot of these.
I'm talking about somebody at the Majority Report right now who I don't think very highly of. But that's
I don't know.
You stop. I hate it.
I don't know if that's true of her or not. I'm just explaining that there's a type of person that's a communications staffer. When you meet somebody in Congress, like in a congressional campaign, and they're like a 20-something, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a communications intern." You're like, "What? Huh? Why'd they hire you? What speeches have you written? Like, what are you talking about?" And it's like, well, because they went to an Ivy on legacy, and their parents are wealthy, and there's some sort of elite, and that's how they get into politics. Like it's a networking thing, right? And so they're fast tracked. Lindy Lee is another example of this type of person. Sure. That's a perfect example. Lindy Lee, right? Comes from money, worked in Wall Street, instantly gets juiced to the top, and is now a national figure for some reason, and they've never done anything but have money, right? Then the other way is like, you incrementally go up the ranks, you get elected as a state representative and a state senator, and then, you slowly build up, you could go to a state school and do this, right? You go state senator, state rep, and you're a machine politician, right? This is kind of more like Kamala Harris, right? Kamala Harris is more of a machine politician. She's not somebody who was like super academically gifted, right?
Clearly.
And then you have the third way, which is an outsider progressive wing. and overcoming a weak machine and getting into power that way, which occasionally happens, right? You get a really bad machine politician, somebody can come from the left-wing lane and win. Like, these are the ways that you get into the game. And somebody like Rachel Bittkoffer is somebody who was cynically trying to take the left-wing lane so that as soon as they got in, they could sell out, right? Like, the first two groups pre-sold, and then, you have the pre-sold, the person who comes from such a high status family that they're not selling out. They're the people that buy. They buy the politicians, right? That's where they come from. Then you have the people that are intentionally following, they're a soldier, foot soldier who earns their way up the ranks. And then you have somebody like Rachel Bittkoffer, who is a grifter by, we need to be more left wing. That was her whole thing in 2020. I don't know if or 2019. I don't know if you know her. Sure. But her whole thing was like, we need to be feed more red meat to the base. We need to lean to the left. And that's why I support Elizabeth Warren over Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is just an old white man, and it's past his prime. Now we need to be Elizabeth Warren. And that was her whole shtick, right? Which is, we need to be left, but we need to be left with Elizabeth Warren, right? And then, she kind of like got a little bit of mainstream cred through that. And then she immediately, sold out completely and just, became a machine person. And then now I don't even know. There's no coherence to Rachel Bittkoffer, right? No, like, she's just chasing whatever is the conventional wisdom now.
But that's where, and that's why, Jen and I we rarely talk about other content creators, but, I've seen that, the people like the Bittkoffer, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, all of those types of people, they're all on the dole. This is all about money. They have no moral center. It doesn't matter. They are whores for the political establishment.
Oh, definitely.
And listen, we are going to have our friend Martha Bueno from Miami on the podcast. She works directly with Thomas Massey, and she just blew the lid. She was on our podcast about a year ago. We're going to bring her back on, possibly even next week. She just blew the lid on DC Drano and Jack Posobiec, and basically showing how these guys are just grifters on the right. These guys just do it for money. They don't believe in anything. They don't fucking care. They're out there pimping cryptocurrency just so that they can make money.
Of course. Yeah, grifting on the right wing is more respected because, like, they have a more sociopathic streak where it's just like, if you're at the top, then you deserve to be at the top. And so however you get to the top, it doesn't matter. Like, it's like, it's Vivek Ramaswamy, right? Like, how did he get to the top? He had his mom cook up a fake study about how this proven ineffective Alzheimer's drug was actually a promising candidate. He spun off a company lying about, promising study, and then, did an IPO with his mom and sold a bunch of shares to a bunch of dopes on Wall Street, cashed out his billions or hundreds of millions. And then it turns out that drug was actually it was actually garbage all along. And so he became rich by literally committing what amounts to a scam. And, to a Republican, well, he's a successful entrepreneur. It doesn't matter that he never produced anything of value. He was able to sell something for a lot of money. It doesn't matter
kind
if
of
it
like
works.
Trump. Kind of like Trump.
Exactly like Trump.
No,
right?
listen, excuse me, everything I sell is 100% real.
He's like a completely failed business person with the Nepo baby situation, screwed over everyone he's ever been in business with, has been sued more than 1,000 times. And yet people think that's successful.
I am successful. I have the greatest lawyers, the greatest people around me. And the people are always trying to screw me. They're really terrible. But the fact is, I made history. I'm one of only 2 presidents ever to win 2 non-consecutive terms. Move over, Cleveland. It's now time for Trump.
You're the only president to ever be twice impeached. So there's that too.
That's also fake news. They were totally against me from day one. They were totally doing it for shits and giggles. I am
fake news.
No, totally fake news. No, but you know what? As Jen, as you like to say many times, he is our president. He is representative of the United States in so many ways.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
He is us.
And that's why when you see somebody, because for a lot of us who got into this, Jen and I had been working together on her first congressional campaign, and we had started doing sort of like these live streams and stuff over the course of her congressional race in 20 against Wasserman Schultz. And then after the election, figuring how do we still stay involved without just always running for office? Because in South Florida, especially in Broward County, that's all anybody wants to do is just run for office. That's all that anybody does. So we decided that's not the answer. There's got to be other ways. And so we transitioned and did this podcast. And one of the people that we would always watch was Kyle Kulinski. Secular Talk was always a big show, and he always had a lot of great takes, and he really was spot on about a number of these things. But as Jen, as you like to joke, is that maybe when he just started dyeing his hair to be the Ken doll, it's like,
well, I had stopped before that. I mean, I stopped following him as soon as he jumped on the got to get behind Joe bandwagon. As soon as he jumped on that, I was like, I'm just done.
But now he's going on these types of podcasts, podcasts that make it their people
mission to defeat the left. Yeah, that's what's crazy.
There are so many people that we have cross-streamed with, cross-networked with that are on the populist right, not the Christian conservative right. We don't deal with that. But when you're talking about people that have, kind of in that Teamsters mindset of working class, are more socially conservative, we get along so much better with people like that than the shit libs. The biggest shit lib of them all is definitely David Pakman. But you can look.
Don't do that again.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do it again, but I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, what I would say about all of that is that I come from a little bit more left-wing tradition, and I am very well educated, well read, and a lot of theory and things like that. And I try to make it approachable for regular people. And I'm very comfortable with the idea of having opposition to what I'm doing that I can't reconcile with, and I just need to overcome. It doesn't mean like regular ass people. Like, if you took me to Thanksgiving and I was talking to, a regular Republican populist voter, I would probably convince them over to my side. Because I understand the way they think. I understand that they've been duped, and it's a matter of planting seeds, right? That being said, somebody like a Charlie Kirk is not somebody who's ever going to, work with us on anything meaningful. It's just the reality. Like,
he's a douche.
Like, these people are just...
The only thing that
ideologically opposed to us, and they take billionaire money. And the thing about
Mike, that's really what it comes down to, because I actually went to one of the Turning Point USA events out in Tampa, and guys, just look at who funds the organization.
You can't imagine how much that costs to have those kind of events.
Oh my God! To take out the Tampa Bay Convention Center,
exactly. Yeah,
these things are millions of dollars. Yeah. Like, they're freaking crazy. Yeah. You're going to bring 20,000 people there for a convention. Like, this is serious shit. And you've got these massive, again, it's the Koch brothers. It's billionaires that you don't even know exist.
There's 100 right-wing foundations for this kind of schlock. And that's why people do it, right? They do the pivot. The thing with Kyle is, like, I understand that right now the Democratic Party is kind of surrendering to Trump, and that the Democratic base voter has always wanted us to fight the Republicans more. Actually, like, if you went and talked to a regular MSNBC person, like, why did they pour so much money in the South Carolina Senate race or the Kentucky Senate race? It's because regular people on MSNBC fucking hate Mitch McConnell. They fucking hate Lindsey Graham, and they want to fight them, right? So they're susceptible to grifting, which is what those people did, right? They grifted with those races that were unwinnable, with these centrist
Well, it's that whole
losers.
Consultant class. That's how they don't care if they can win. They just care if they can profit off of a campaign. Kamala spent $500 million on staffing in a 109-day campaign.
Right.
That doesn't happen on the right, by the way.
Oh, well, we can actually talk about that because it's a very interesting point. And just let me close this first point out, though, which is just like, okay. So now that kind of resistance to Trump lane is actually open, because the centrist Democrats and their hangers-on, the grifters that you brought up, they're going to follow the Democratic Party officials because that's what they're bought and paid to do. Your Oliviana, whatever her name is, those people are going to, the Harry Sassans, they're going to follow the Democratic Party off a cliff of capitulating and collaborating, right? So, like, the resistance to Trump lane is open. So I think that's what I see Kyle doing, which is like, okay, I'm going to try to talk to regular Democrats who stopped watching CNN and stopped watching MSNBC because they're so disgusted with how the Democrats lied to them about Trump being a fascist and this being the most important election, that Kamala Harris was going to win easily, even though Kyle said that. And I think he's trying to reach those people, which I don't think is a bad idea. But what I do think is a bad idea is using your alternative media platform to prop up the people that are literally trying to use alternative media to prop up the establishment. You know, Project Liberal, we're never, ever going to work with them on anything. And building them up and using your multi-million platform to build them up, that's what I objected to, which is just the idea of you're trying to build bridges with somebody with no clout and who represents your ideological enemy. What are you doing? Like, what is the logic? There's no logic here. You're not creating a left-wing movement. And I do think that those of us who recognize what the Democratic Party really is have an obligation to go and try to find those disillusioned MSNBC wine moms and invite them into a progressive, populist movement that talks about real shit and is honest about things. Like, for example, California is a shithole and it's run by Democrats that have a super majority and everything fucking sucks. If Vote Blue, no matter who, is so good, how come Democrats can't do anything correct? Like, there's a housing crisis in California, even though they're losing population. They can't build a high-speed rail in 20 fucking years, a single line. You can't build one railroad. Like, what? Yeah, this is a technology.
You can't build a high-speed rail line from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. I mean, that is...
we just got one. We just got the Bright Line from here to Orlando, and it kills people daily. So we can't get that right. I'm just saying.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, we can't actually build anything. The streets are non-functional. There's congestion out the ass. You know, the income inequality is disastrous. The taxes are high. And then what do you buy with that money? Right? Like, I would say, like, I spent a lot of time in Vienna, Austria, because of my family. I don't know if you know about, I've ever been to Vienna. But in Vienna,
was there very briefly a long time ago.
In Vienna, 60% of people live in social public housing or nonprofit housing, right? Yeah. 80% of people are qualified for it, right? And there is basically no homelessness. You know, I want you to, they have an incredible public transit system that when you walk on, you know, it's an honor system.
I know. I was thankful for that.
And it's like, this kind of society, these kind of basic functions are actually not that hard. They only spend $400 million a year building social and public housing, you know, in Vienna, which has 2 million people. And they end up, I think they produce something like 7,000 new apartments every year or something with that money. In San Francisco, they spent $700 million on homelessness. And the problem got worse. Oh, yeah. And that's a city of 800,000 people.
Because where did that money really go?
It was stolen. It was stolen by the nonprofit industrial complex. And like, that is graft that the Democratic Party is corrupt.
I was just going to say that is so much worse in the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. It is not even funny.
Well, the Republicans are corrupt in their own ways, you know, and like, I don't want anybody to think that the like, there's one siren song that you have to hold yourself back and be aware of, which is the idea of the shit libs are so fucking evil and bad, I want to own them. And you see one group of people does occasionally own the shit libs, and that's the Republicans. And so people get attracted to, like, I need to own these people. And so they start feeling themselves pulled toward the Republicans. The Republicans are just as bad.
No, like, they are not our friend. And we never purport that they're our friend. However, I personally have taken greater issue with the Democratic Party for a few reasons. One, it was my party, and I joined it when I was 18 under this premise that it was sort of the left party, the working party. And so I go after my own house, right? You clean your own house before you go at someone else's. So I've always been harder on them. And plus, they're the ones that pretend to be a certain way and are not. So it's sort of like Republican will just stab you in the chest and the Democrats will stab you in the back.